Awards for Best Employment Law, a fierce advocate fighting for your legal needs.
Welcome to Legal Views with your host, Attorney Sheila R. Stuart.
Good afternoon. I am so excited to be here on this evening with you. We have an outstanding gentleman with us on this evening, Dr. Jonathan Shepherd. And you're going to get a chance to hear a lot about him. At first, I want to just acknowledge Daryl Breath with C-Joy Network and Donnie Savage with C-Joy Network and C-Joy Network Live. We are coming to you live on tonight with Legal Views with Attorney Sheila R. Stuart, broadcasting on Facebook streaming, YouTube streaming, C-Joy Network, and 365 Live. Now, that's a lot, but you got it all out there. And today, we're going to be discussing the effects of depression, anxiety, duress, and stress. As you know, we are living in a complicated era right now with the COVID-19 and so many other unprecedented events that have taken place. And due to these unprecedented events, it has created a culture, a climate of stress and depression for so many individuals. And I will hope that you will stay with us throughout the broadcast because we have Dr. Shepherd with us. He is going to give you some valuable information that will make your life easier as you go through any type of turbulent activity. Okay? And I want to read to you some information about Dr. Shepherd so you would know the type of gentleman that we have with us on this evening. Dr. Shepherd is an award-winning mental health professional named Top Doctor in the field of psychiatry. His comprehensive approach to wellness has made him a highly sought-after and well-respected motivational speaker. He is renowned for his caring and nurturing bedside manner. Dr. Shepherd have served and provided treatment for clients in a variety of areas, including attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, mood disorder, anxiety disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders, post-traumatic stress disorders, and many more. And I want to talk to you about some of the anxiety disorders because I get a lot of letters from individuals that's seeking legal assistance. And sometimes some of these letters, I can read these letters and I can tell that these people are mentally ill. Some of them are saying that they're being followed and they're going to be kidnapped. And I mean, I get a lot of information. So I am really glad to get some advice from you on some of these things. His mission is to help all individuals obtain access to quality mental health services. He is a graduate of the University of Illinois at Chicago Medical School, an adult psychiatry program, as well as the Johns Hopkins University Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Fellowship. Welcome, Dr. Shepherd. How are you on this evening?
I'm doing well, and thank you for that introduction. I thank you for the opportunity to be with you and with your wonderful audience who's going to listen to our conversation today. And I am so excited that you're bringing up these issues because they definitely pertain to what's going on in today's society.
Yes, and mental health is often seen as a taboo. You know, people see mental health as a taboo. It's okay to have diabetes. It's okay to have hypertension. But if you have a mental health defect, like you're bipolar, or you have some type of schizophrenia, you had a psychotic break when you're a teenager, then people frown on that. And especially sometimes in the African American community. So I really want you to help our listeners to understand that mental health is not anything to frown upon. We need to get the information and get the help that we need. Okay. And before I turn Dr. Shepherd loose, I want to just let the audience know that our theme this year is manifesting faith. Manifesting faith, and we're coming out of the 11th chapter of Hebrews, first verse. Therefore, focus, reset, and you can manifest all of your dreams, all of your goals, all of your objectives. You can get them done through your faith. Remember, your faith is a servant to you. Okay, Dr. Shepherd, can you tell our listeners exactly from a clinical perspective, what is depression? Because depression is more of a clinical diagnosis. Lots of times people say they're depressed. They may have played the lottery and lost, and they say, I'm depressed, I lost. No, let's talk about what depression really looks like.
Absolutely. So thank you again. I'm loving the comments already from your viewers who are watching. Let me just say something real quickly, because you said something very powerful about the theme for this year of manifestation of faith. You cannot have a full manifestation of faith unless your mental health is on point. I'll say that again. If your mental health is off, your faith will be challenged and you will not be able to experience the fullness of it. What we will do during this time, we will talk about what mental health is, but I want to address your questions very specifically, and I will interweave what mental health is, so that people will be able to understand how the connection makes with your faith. So depression is a clinical diagnosis. I think what happens is people use the word depression erroneously. They just, girl, I'm depressed, man, I'm just depressed. And they really don't know what they're saying. But if they really did know what the true definition of depression is, they would not use it. Depression can be summed up in 8 letters as an acronym, SIGI CAPS. And I know I don't, in my time today, I can't go through each and every single one and expound upon it. But what happens is when a person is depressed, they experience a few of these 8 symptoms. And when they experience these 8 symptoms, they have to occur for 2 consecutive weeks. So what I teach on is when people are depressed, it really is a disorder. It really is an illness. It's not just having a bad day. It's not just having a fight with your friend or with your spouse, or somebody cursed you out on your job, or you had a fight on your way to church, or the pastor talked about you, or things or whatever. Now we're depressed. No, we have to be careful when we use those terms. Here are the 8 things to look for. SIGECAPS. And I hope one of your listeners is out there, because otherwise I'll be typing it as I'm talking with you, Attorney Stuart. SIGE. S stands for sleep. There's a change in your sleep pattern. I, change in your interests. G, excessive guilt. E, change in your energy. SIGE. All right. Sleep, interest, guilt, energy. And then CAPS. C, concentration. There's a change there. Appetite, either eat too much or eat too little. P is a term that we utilize in psychiatry. Is a long term, but I'm going to break it down to you. It's called psychomotor agitation or irritation. Psychomotor agitation or retardation. All right. I'm going to say that one more time. Psychomotor agitation or retardation. What does that mean, Dr. Shepherd? That's a long term. All it means is that when psychomotor agitation, those people, when you go talk to them, you say hello, and they say, well, why are you speaking to me? You know who I'm talking about? They just have an attitude for no reason, really easily irritable. Many of those people are depressed. Or psychomotor retardation. They move through life so slowly. It almost looks like life is moving much faster than what they are. And then the last S, as I said, 8, is suicidality. Anytime where you are contemplating taking your own life, those are the symptoms of clinical depression, and they must last for 2 consecutive weeks. Somebody said, well, that's a long time. Well, no, really, it does happen like that. Long answer, but that's what depression is.
Now, if a person is experiencing these types of characteristics, they can't sleep. There's a change in energy. and it's only, and the time frame for this is 2 weeks. Can it be more like a situational depression? Is there an opportunity? I don't know if there's a clinical terminology or not,
Mm-hmm.
but what if a person has lost a loved one, or if they lost a big business deal? They had been working 2 or 3 years on a multi-million-dollar business deal, and then it folded, and they're upset about it for 2 or 3 weeks. Is that still considered clinical depression?
Well, and that's a very good question. So, what I also teach on is the difference between distress and disorder. So, we all will experience distress. Distress is just what you just talked about. Um, what's happened, the pandemic has caused all of us to be distressed, if we're honest with ourselves. No one has been untouched by what we're going through. So, there's been a huge loss. And so, if you look and think about it, if you can imagine a line, a continuum, if you would. And if you look over here where I'm shaking my hand, that's where distress is. We all experience that. If you take enough hits in life as you journey on your road and keep getting distressed, and you don't do anything about it, you will reach a destination called disorder. When you reach that point called disorder, that means you're no longer functioning properly. And that's where I get scared, because that means that if you're a child or adult, the things that you normally would do, you can't do, or you're not functioning and doing them properly. So we have a lot of people, attorney, that are functioning, but they're not functioning properly. And so that's why you can have what you're called situational depression. Absolutely. You're just distressed. That makes sense. That's normal. But if you stay there long enough, you can journey on that road and hit a point called disorder. And when you get to disorder, that's when you need to get help.
Can you clarify more exactly what a disorder is? So if a person has stayed in the state of distress for too long, and now they have moved into the state of disorder, give us some examples of what a person of a disorder is? Because I too believe that, especially I don't mean any harm, but especially in the church, you hear people perpetually ask for the same thing over and over and over again through prayer, for example. It's just an example. And if you've been asking for that in prayer for so many years, it must create at some point in your life on this journey distress.
Yeah.
And if that situation is not properly handled, okay, I believe that it can and it will move into a disorder. But because we are not properly trained at so many different levels, we're just not properly trained. We so many things go unrecognized. So can you help us to identify what a disorder would look like after it has progressed to from distress?
Absolutely. And I think the best way to do is just provide some examples. So
Okay.
again, the definition of disorder means to be unable or inability to function properly. So I'm a child adolescent psychiatrist. So I'll start with children and I'll move to adults. For children, a child who's not functioning properly is a child who is no longer going to his or her school. Or if they go to school, they can't function because their mind is so wrapped up in what has happened. It might be anxiety, it might be depression, it might be ADHD, to where the child desires to want to do better, but they just can't because of what has happened. Now, some of that may be organic, maybe in the brain, or even environmental. We have to understand that mental health is both organic and it can be due to the environment. So please don't ever just state, well, I had a real good family, so I got real good genes, so I can't experience depression. That's a lie. Life can happen to where you find yourself in the midst of being disordered if you don't get yourself together. And let me tell you, I've found myself there. But so children, they're not functioning properly. They refuse to bathe. They refuse to eat. Staying up all night, can't sleep. That's when we find that some children are disordered. Adults, some of the same things. They're no longer able to go to their jobs. They're no longer willing to take care of their families. You were talking about church. Many people are disordered in our sanctuaries. When you see them stop doing the things that they normally like to do, they lose interest. Things used to excite them. They may come to worship, but they sit in the back and they no longer are participating. And it's not because they're mad. It's because you can see a shift. What happens is too many times we overlook the people who are experiencing disorder and tell them, oh, just get over it, or just go to the altar, pray to God about it. No, we need to sit down and communicate and find out what is happening to them, to why this change has happened. Let me tell you, there are a lot of people right now who are disordered. They're not functioning properly. They're trying to find their way. They're stuck. They're bitter. They're unforgiving. They're sad. They're anxious. And when these things creep up and they overtake every part of your life and they consume all parts of your life, that's when you know that you're disordered. You find no joy in life. You find no joy in what you used to do. Again, this is children and adolescents. These are people who are disordered, and these are the people who I get very much concerned about. Let me just say this real quickly. Well, Dr. Shepherd, you're talking so strongly. How do you know about this? Because I've been there. I had to go through this period myself during this years now of the pandemic, when I lost several loved ones who were close to me.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And when I tell you several grandmother, 7-year-old nephew, close friends at school, at my job, and then just turning the last quarter of 2021, I lost an aunt and uncle within 3 weeks of each other.
Oh my goodness.
So when you talk about being disordered, I found myself sometimes operating and then realized that I was operating out of order. How do you know someone's operating out of order? They just function and they start hurting people. Don't even realize they done cut somebody and they bleeding. Wow. People are burned out. Don't know how to say no. Taking on too much. Overwhelmed. So as you see, it's very involved. And so these are just some of the examples, attorney, as to what a person who is disordered looks like. And really, we need to have more of a one-on-one conversation, because for some people, it's very specific as to what they look like when they're disordered. But those are just some of the key examples and highlights I wanted to mention at this time.
You're doing an outstanding job, and thank you for taking the time out to share such an in-depth information body of knowledge with us, because we need to hear this. I received a message before this show, and it really kind of rubbed me wrong. It was this gentleman made a comment, and he stated that he said, whatever happened to fasting and praying and going to the altar? Whatever happened to fasting and praying and going to the altar for problems? And I responded back to the gentleman and stated that you can fast and pray. Most people fast and pray anyway in January and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Fridays. And I stated to him, you can fast and pray, but that doesn't preclude you for seeking medical intervention, whether it is mental health intervention or whether it is a medical intervention. So lots of times we will get the medical intervention for medical problems, diabetes, hypertension, cancer, chemotherapy. But when it comes to mental disorders, people walk around for years noticeably mentally ill, schizophrenic, bipolar, anxious, anxiety disorders. And it's just like we just let these people walk among us, and we do not present any type of programmatic assistance. And that's why I'm doing this program. I'm hoping that it will reach some of the people to let them know that you're just not going through maybe a test, but you may need to seek some mental health counseling, and that's okay. Can you talk about that? That it's okay to get mental health counseling?
Absolutely, it is okay. And I would say that every person needs to have someone who they can talk to whether it be licensed. When you are disordered, you need to talk to a licensed therapist and a licensed mental health professional. But in life, when you're distressed, you need to have somebody who you can talk to so that you can be able to share what is happening. God did not call for us to be isolated beings. And those who argue that really don't understand the word of the Lord and really don't understand how God made us, honestly. So when people even, and I'm thankful that you brought up that comment because I did see that. And, those type of comments, yes, they do bother me. And it lets me know that some folks, they still are struggling with it. And that's okay. I just want to help educate them and let them know that it's okay. The Bible talks about how we need to be able to seek treatment. The Bible is very clear about, yes, we need to fast and pray. And absolutely, I agree with. That comes first. But let me tell you, when you fast and pray, the Lord will send an answer. Oh, yes, he will. The Lord will send an answer, just like he did for the prophet Hezekiah, who prayed for God. I don't want this to take me out. And guess what? How the Lord answered? He said, yeah, I want to give you 12 more years. And, people go up into a frenzy and praise, but they forget, how did the Lord treat him? For that is the example, attorney, of the first use of penicillin in the Bible. What? Penicillin's in the Bible? Absolutely. If you look at the plant that Hezekiah used to remove the boils off of his body, it's actually the same thing of what we do in penicillin today. What do you mean? Medicine was seen in the body, seen in the Bible, and seen in the body of Christ. We have to stop telling people that medicine is of the devil. Oh, my Lord. That is an absolute lie. How else can I prove it? Because if you studied the word omniscient, all right, or God is, what we talk about, God is omnipresent, right? And we talk about he is omnipotent, but we also say omniscient. If you look at what that word means, it means that he's the God of all science. What do you mean, God of all science? Yeah, that means he is the one who created science. So God is not against me. God is not against anybody in our profession's attorney, because he put us here so that we can make sure that we can help people who are struggling. I've seen God in my own family, where my own father, I know he doesn't mind me sharing this, was cured from 2 different types of cancers through the hands of a physician. And the Lord allowed for me to be able to connect with those persons so that my father could be here today. How did that happen? Because first of all, I was praying and fasting. So yes, I agree with that. But the Lord will give you solutions. What's happening, attorney? Man, I feel my help here now. What's happening here, attorney, is that we after we pray and fast, we sit there and be like, well, God, it's all on you now. And God's looking at
that's just the beginning of it.
Oh my God. He will give you the solution, but he wants you to work it out. That's why your theme is so important about manifesting faith. How dare you say that that's all we need to do? Because that means that your faith is so small that you don't even understand what you got to do once you get up and pray. Oh, see, I would have had a field day with that particular comment, because that means that person doesn't even understand the whole fullness of what God gave for them. They're living a real shallow life, when God wants them to have a full life. And if you're going to manifest faith, that means that you get up after you pray and fast, and you believe God, and you do what he says, and you find those strategies to work, and he will give you the people who will help you to be able to get through. People can be healed from mental illness. That's why I'm in it. I've seen it. The things that you have stated: schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder, ADHD. And guess how some healing happens? Through medication. Absolutely. I'll write you a prescription real quick and see how you do better.
That's awesome. Can you describe anxiety disorder, the difference between anxiety disorder and depression? Because a person can be clinically depressed, and you gave us the definition of that. But a person can also deal with just a manifold of different types of anxiety. Can you tell us about anxiety and the disorders of it?
Absolutely. So anxiety is something that we all face. Anxiety can manifest as panic, fear, or uneasiness. Okay. So panic, fear, uneasiness, those are some of the synonyms for anxiety. Anxiety is the most common disorder in our country for children and adults. So what is an anxiety disorder? It is panic, it is fear, it is uneasiness that is out of proportion to the true situation. I'll say that again. It's panic, fear, and uneasiness that is out of proportion to the true situation. So let's take, for instance, anxiety disorder, in which I see it even present day when I go into a grocery store and I sneeze and people scatter like ants. Like, I'm about to say like roaches, but I ain't gonna go like roaches when you turn the lights on. but anyway, that's anxiety, you know. And let me tell you, where else we see it? In road rage.
Yes.
I've never seen so many people who are trying to run me off the road. And I'm not talking just exaggerating. I literally had someone following me a few months ago because they felt that I was driving too slow. And they had all these different lanes around them. It just anxiety because people are so anxious. And because now their panic, their fear, their uneasiness is out of proportion to what is really happening around them. And so that is what anxiety disorder is.
Well, why are so many of our young people today? I saw on CNN where this young girl, she was talking about how she was doing the virtual learning. And when she began to talk about the virtual learning, she began to cry.
Yeah.
And she talked about how she couldn't handle it. And
Wow.
now that the what is this new COVID variation? Omicron.
Omicron, yeah.
Now that the Omicron variation has gotten worse, and some of the schools are planning on closing down, she was stating that she couldn't go back into the virtual school, and they used a child, a college person, and a person that worked on a professional job. And all of these individuals were discussing how the thought of going back into a virtual world of working, going back to school, it was just too much for them to bear. What tips would you give someone that's experiencing this COVID anxiety as it relates to virtual learning and just the whole virtual? Because it bothers me. I'll just be transparent. I have anxiety about being on all of these virtual calls and Zooms. And it makes me nervous almost sometimes. I don't like all of this, virtual activity. Now, unless I'm presenting something that may help someone, but when I have to participate and say something from a virtual perspective, I don't know why that makes me nervous, but it does.
Yeah. And in part because we've grown accustomed and we were made to be around each other.
Okay.
We were not made to be isolated from each other. So that's in part what we're feeling. And the way in which it happened, attorney, is that stuff just happened so quickly. And there was no forewarning. There was no type of preparation. So especially when you're dealing with the anxious people, you have to prepare them. You have to let them know what is about to happen so that they can get themselves together. You don't surprise an anxious person. Otherwise, you might not like the response that you get.
Right. And I think we're not, well, maybe I shouldn't say we, but it appears to me that we're not honest about the impact of what COVID is doing in our workplace and in our church, and that you can see the duress that people are having, that they get upset easily. And I've seen individuals crying or being upset about different things. And I don't think people would be under as much duress if we weren't in this new climate. This climate is here to stay for a while. How long? I don't know, but it's here for a while.
Yeah.
What advice would you give individuals that are struggling with this COVID environment. I've gone back to my office. I am not working virtually at home anymore like I once was. I go to my office several days a week and I stay there all day into the evening and I work. And because being at home working and doing it everything virtually, that was bothering me to a certain extent after I had done it so long and I had to get back to my office. So what advice would you give to individuals that are having anxiety or a little duress as it relates to the virtual environment, being separated, not going to the office, going to the office, and etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to stay there with that point regarding the children who are going back to school virtually, because that's a very important point. I know we have some parents out there. We might have some children out there. And so, yes, children, they want that connection with their peers, with their friends. But if we have to go back virtually, parents, this is what we need to do. We need to clean and designate a space for learning at home. We can't have our children learning in their bedrooms. Their bed's not made. They just laying on the bed or wherever that is. And so what happens is, which even happens for adults, is that they begin to mix the two worlds. And as they mix the two worlds, there's no separation. So the place where they used to get rest and relaxation in their bedroom now has become a place of anxiety. And so what we've done, we've created now a class or a space of anxiety or a space of confusion, because as some of the children are struggling to even comprehend, because some of the teachers are having problems even connecting with the students on the virtual platforms. So now the space where they would normally relax, to sleep, or to just unwind has now become a place of confusion and anxiety. And a lot of people don't think about that. So that's why we have to designate a space. If you can, everyone's home situation is very different, but designate a space, clean it out, and make sure that that person can be there for whatever period of time that has to be there. And then let that person take some breaks. When you are working at home, just like I did for those first 3 months too, Attorney Stuart, my body started to break down. I felt like I had sciatica. And I was like, Lord, I'm way, first of all, I'm way too young to be having sciatica. My legs were hurting. So I started walking more, and I just made a determination. I am getting out of this home, and I am going to a different place. Even those who watch me on various other broadcasts, you can see I'm in a different venue in my house now, because I just want to change it up. Because there's just a different feel when you have a space that is different and designated for what you need to have done. And then you have to know how to take breaks. Children need breaks. Adults need breaks. You can't keep working. And what was happening also, Attorney Stuart, is that I found myself working even longer when I was at home because I wasn't going anywhere. Yeah. So
I found myself at some point, I was getting up at 3:30 in the morning. And I was starting work at like 4:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And then working all day to like 8 o'clock in the evening.
Wow.
And I started noticing that I was being agitated. I was irritable. Well, I'm working nonstop. I noticed that there was no separation in my life. And that's why I had to get out of the house for me. Because I found myself working longer and longer. It was just like a black hole. And when you go into the office and create a new environment for yourself, that worked better for me. That worked better for me.
And let me speak to, because I see a couple of people here who are pastors and people out here who oversee. You have to make yourself available. First of all, pastors, you got to have someone who you can speak to. So make sure you get yourself together first. You can't be talking to the people you yourself, on 10. So you got to get yourself together first. But then you have to make yourself available to the people. And what's been missing, and I'm not throwing a stone at anybody, but I can say this honestly because I've watched. What's been missing is that there's a lot of people who have not made themselves available to their congregants during this time. On platforms like just talk. You don't have to be meeting and trying to strategize. And no, just sit back like we're doing. This is a wonderful conversation. We're educating, but it's a good environment. It's a good feel. It's a good vibe. And that helps people to relate to you better. It helps people to relieve some of that stress, relieve some of that tension. And if it can't be with your leader, do it with your family. Do it with some people who you trust. And then watch your conversation when you're talking. Stop talking about all the latest gossip, who got killed, who got murdered, and who's doing this and who ain't doing this. And I can't wait till we get back so we can do. No, just talk, talk about stuff that just relaxes you, So we have to be careful of our communication, even when we get together, so that we don't find ourselves increasing that anxiety.
That is so good. That is so good. Since you brought up leaders, what advice would you give pastors, leaders that are suffering in silence from depression? Because we have a lot of leaders that are depressed and they can't talk to people and they're not comfortable sharing. Who do they go to? And then if they had a confidant, many of those confidants may have died over the last couple of years. So we've lost so many giants. Yeah. And with the loss of all of these giants and people, not having these confidants, what advice would you give to a pastor that's dealing with anxiety, depression, and he or she may not have anyone to speak with?
Absolutely. So I understand. And, if you look to the scriptures, you think about the person such as David, think about Elijah, those who are battling anxiety, those who are battling mental health disorders in the scriptures. And you look to what they had to do. They literally had to fall on their face, ask God, Lord, I need your help. And then when they got up from prayer, the Lord will send them someone who they could talk to. You, even as a leader, you need to make sure you have someone who you can bounce ideas off of. A leader, another mentor. Has to be someone who you trust, a confident. It may be a spouse. Sometimes you can't trust your spouse because you just make them more anxious. So maybe it's not your spouse, but maybe it's another person. But one of the things that I have to admonish to leaders, and I say admonish, I warn them that don't think that you're invincible. Let me tell you what has happened. Pew Research, which does a lot of the studies during this point in time on religious activity, has demonstrated that many of the pastors, religious leaders, they have fallen off on their religious activities during this period of time. Over 50% of them have been honest to state that they no longer pray as often or read their word because of the growing anxiety. So what I encourage them is to do when I speak with them, let's find some groups, let's find some peer supports, let's find some people who you can be honest with. One of the things that I was blessed to do last year was to work with a pastor group in Spartanburg, South Carolina, the Baptist Association.
Oh, wow.
And they did a wonderful retreat in Asheville, North Carolina. I had never been there before, did that. God opened up the door. And let me tell you what happened when they got together. There were so many people who had been just holding back, but I'll never forget this one pastor. Her spouse had died during the pandemic. And I said something to her that really struck a nerve with her. But I just listened to what she said. What I was talking about was how you have to be careful how you don't allow addictions. So when people talk about addictions, they think I'm talking about alcohol. No, I wasn't talking about alcohol. I was just talking about TV addiction. How sometimes you just watching TV too much. Hulu, Netflix. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all don't even know what Hulu, Netflix was, Disney Channel was before the pandemic started. And now your bills are. Anyway, y'all, you should hit me up and comment if you know what I'm talking about. But she found herself doing that. And she said, Dr. Shepherd, I didn't like what you said, but the Holy Spirit told me it was what I needed to hear. And she began to break down. It just changed the whole atmosphere. She said, I found myself not wanting to deal with the pain or the grief of my death of my husband because I was watching so much TV. And that was my way of comforting myself.
Oh, wow.
And let me tell you, the Lord just took over from there. And so we have to be able to find ways. If you are a congregant and you could see in your leader, you have to go to your leader and approach them respectfully. Think about it. When the prophet Nathan went to David and he knew that something was off with his leader, he approached him with dignity and with respect, didn't he?
Yes.
So some of us, sometimes we can see that with our leaders, and we have to say, you know what? I see something's off. What can I do to assist you? What can I do to help you? And just maybe you being available might be that way to help that person to share with you. Now, I'm not saying you're going to become that pastor's confidant. I'm not saying that, because typically the congregate shouldn't be. But you might just say, hey, I noticed something's off with you. How can we be of assistance to you? Because we want to hold your arms up. You boost them back up. So again, that answer is one that takes some more specificity depending on who that leader is. But I think I've shared some highlights on how we can help that leader.
That's very good. And I also think one of the things that a leader can do is to have a respite. That's one of the things that I have not done for myself as much as I need to are the respites. Prior to the pandemic, I was an avid traveler. And after, once we got into COVID, I don't travel nearly as much as I used to. I only took like 3 little trips in 2021. And that was a big change for me. So I think leadership and those that are working and have a lot on their plate, I think just having a good respite and getting away from everything, a change of environment, a change of conversation can alleviate some of the stress that we have. And that's one of the activities I plan to engage in more for myself in 2022, if the Lord's will, is to take more respites, and travel and see some nice things, jump on a plane and just go somewhere and to get away. And I think we have to find out those things that we can do. Exercise, I think, is another good way of releasing tension and stress. A good run, a good walk, or swift, a walk somewhere or in the park around a lake, to look at something, really uplifting and beautiful, not to, driving around the corridors of some beat up area of the city that may make you more distressed, but to maybe drive somewhere and look at something beautiful. And take, a road trip maybe to a lake or something like that. I think, people need to try to identify things that they can do to help alleviate the duress in their lives.
Yeah. And, leaders have to learn how to trust. You have to make sure you have what my pastor calls a first deep and second deep and third deep, which means that when you're not there, there's a person who can step in and who can carry the load, and you should not be carrying the load by yourself. And so you need to have somebody who can step right on in. And so that, yes, they may not do it like you. Of course not, because they're not you.
Right.
You should be training robots anyway, or, or dummies or whatnot. No, you want people to be who they are, but you want to give them the responsibility so that when you're not there, they know how to carry on, and then you can go and rest. Because we don't learn how to be able to pass the legacy on, or even share the load and responsibility. Let me tell you, the ministry that you're in, or your job or profession, whatever it is, even if you're a housewife, it will kill you if you don't know how to be able to share that load and responsibility.
Excellent response. Let's talk about transitional periods in life, because last year we lost so many great individuals. Yes. So many great individuals are no longer among us. And it's very hurtful. It's very sad. It's like in many instances, we're losing coverings. So many of our great leaders, our bishops and supervisors have died. And our family members have died. Yeah. Loved ones have died. Due to COVID and due to other circumstances, people have lost their jobs. They have lost housing. I have been doing a research study on the homeless problem in the United States, particularly focusing on the Los Angeles homeless problem in Los Angeles, looking at the homeless problem as well in Oakland, California, and how those areas have changed. And I'm going to bring on a legislator. We're going to talk about some of the things that's going on in LA. And some people are saying that it has become a third world country because of how people are living there now. Those people are losing their incomes and losing their jobs, and they're moving from one socioeconomic level to another one. Those are like transitional periods. One year you're making this, the next year you're on the streets. What information or advice would you give to individuals that have found themselves in a transitional period of their life?
Yes, the COVID-19 pandemic has shifted our world and has utterly changed it. It is my belief that we will never be the same again. And I'm okay with that. And I hope everyone out there is okay with that. And if you're not, I pray that you are able to come to some resolve about that. Our world has changed from what we have known back in 2019. And it has shifted us to go through a transition period. I've been through quite a transitional period, as I mentioned earlier, through some deaths. I had to make some personal transitions in relation to ministry. I've had to make some other personal changes that I knew that the Lord was asking for me to make. The Lord is not going to put a gun to your head and make them. He does give you the permissive will. But as you go through those transitional periods, you have to understand that it's a loss. And just like you go through the loss of a loved one, you will have that same feeling when you lose a job, when you transition to a new home, when you transition to a new school. That these stages of grief can be applied to just those same type of situations also. So what am I saying? When you go through the loss of a job or finances or inability to be able to work or see one another like you normally would, you'll go through that shock. You'd be like, whoa, I wasn't ready for that. You'll experience anger. These all things are natural, okay? There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with being angry. Nothing wrong with being angry at God. Ask Job, God can handle your anger. He just said, just make sure you don't talk about me. Don't sin against me. But he can handle your anger, all right? And then you'll go through sadness. And then there'll be some type of where you even start to bargain with God. Well, Lord, if you allow this to happen, or if you had not allowed this to happen, then I wouldn't be where I am today. So all these different things you'll find yourself going through as you go through these transitional periods. And what I want to let people know as you go through these transitional periods, it's okay to have these feelings. I'll say it one more time, because sometimes people actually feel guilty about these feelings that they're having. It's okay to have them. The problem, attorney, is that we don't know how to manage them. And that's where we come in. That's where I come in. That's where mental health professionals. You can have the feelings, you can have the emotions, because that's how God created us. But he also created us with a mind and wants us to have a mindset, how to be able to manage those emotions. Because again, if I go back to what you talk about with faith, you can't experience the faith that God wants you to have. You don't know how to be able to manage your emotions. Whoa, absolutely not. You just can't. If you are emotionally dysregulated, you up, down, we don't know who you're going to be when you walk into church. And I'm talking about pastors and, who we going to get today? Yeah. And I hate to say it, it is that bad sometimes, and I had to check my own self, even when I walk into my own clinic, even when I'm having bad days or when I'm grieving, I couldn't just walk in and just want to tell everybody off if they do something. No,
you can't.
Had to bring that under. That's where the Holy Ghost, my God, and I feel him right now. That's how you know you got the Holy Ghost, because the fruit of the Spirit, what? Love, joy, peace, temperate. He gives you the ability to have self-control. And that's why we have to seek him. That's how we have to want more of him. The Holy Ghost doesn't come to give you the dance and shout and to speak in tongues and stuff like that. Man, people go to classes and universities and stuff like that. I'm not knocking it. That is evidence. But let me tell you what the true signs of it is when you know that you have what Paul talked about with the fruit of the Spirit, and knowing that this allows for you to go through. How is it that you're going to go through a transitional period and not have the Holy Ghost? Wow. Now, again, I know
it's difficult.
Yeah,
it's going to be difficult. and very hard to manage that. But you see people that profess what they have, and I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not a God police or anything like that.
Right.
But you want to be able to have control over your emotions and to bring them in subjection. So if a person don't have control over their emotions, they're very emotional, what advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, and that's where we have to learn emotional regulation. Let me tell you, some of the things I'm talking about, the reason I could talk so strongly about it is because I had to go through it myself and continue. This is a learning journey, all right? If you want to learn about emotional regulation, this is where you need to, again, seek out mental health professionals, those who can help you and saying, these are areas where you need to tighten up at. It's a wonderful time in 2022 to make a self-assessment. I said, Lord, I was listening to legal views with attorney Stuart, and there was a doctor on there. He was talking about emotional regulation. God, help me. Let this be the year where I learn how to be able to not allow certain things to get on my nerves as easily as they used to. Lord, help me to be able to walk out forgiveness. I'm reading this wonderful book right now called Walking Out Forgiveness, How to Be Able to Forgive for Real, Total Forgiveness by R.T. Kendall. And just putting a shout out there, because what it's helping me to do is saying, wow, I thought I really knew how to manage some of these emotions when people hurt me, when people do me wrong. And I didn't realize that I was having what's called limited forgiveness. So I would allow them to come back, but they couldn't come at the same level. But the Lord has been challenging me in this book as I read. Did you really release them? Because forgiveness is not about them. It's about you. So I'm just sharing with you some of the emotional regulation things that I'm doing. But the first things I had to do, I had to be honest with myself and said, Lord, I know I don't have it all together. I want to be better. Help me to do better during this period of time where people are falling away. And so we have to be honest with ourselves as you're consecrating yourself. Come on. I know you're doing that Daniel fast and that diet and consecration. You're trying to lose the weight. That's wonderful. That's the physical. Ask God to consecrate your mind. Lord Jesus. People don't even ask that anymore. Lord, just wash my mind. You don't even know what that means.
No.
We
want to see a change. So when things are over, we should see increments of change. You may not be 100%, but there should be some manifestation of a change. If you really do what you need to do from a spiritual point of view and from working on the emotional adjustments and so forth. We have a few minutes left, and I want to talk about a very serious subject matter, which is suicide.
Yes.
Okay. Suicide is a huge problem, and many people are thinking about suicide because they have lost hope. They have lost hope for the future. Maybe someone that they love, that they were very close to, is now deceased, and they have given up on life. And what information can we give individuals that are listening to help them recognize the signs of a person that is at risk of committing suicide? Because you see people shoot themselves and they kill other people, and then someone will say, I can't believe this happened. John was a great person. We never knew that he was suffering from all of these things. You hear it all the time. What can we do differently as we go into 2022? I guess I said that right. To intervene, to help save a life, to help prevent these suicidal thoughts and attempts.
So suicide is real, and we have to not be ashamed to talk about it. So that's number one. We have to know that it's okay to talk about suicide. And when you talk about it, you can't I hate to use the word can. So let's say it like this. When you talk to the person, you want to be able to, even though it may hurt you, you want to look at them like you're there for them. So if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, attorney, I want to hurt myself," you can't, "Oh my God, no, no, no." You can't freak out.
Right.
Like them. Because let me tell you, when you freak out, it's actually going to show them that they can't trust you with what they need to talk to you about.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to build ourselves up. And again, it takes time to do this. All right. So we have to increase our communication with our children. Now, still with our children, because believe it or not, Black children between the ages of 5 and 12 is now the most at risk age group of youth within our country of hurting or killing themselves. Black youth between the ages of 5 to 12 have now surpassed white youth in killing themselves. And it's been like that for the last 4 years. We're already a minority. So now we're killing ourselves more. So you must know that the enemy is at work here. So I'll be honest with you. We know the enemy is at work. But families, parents, we've got to talk to our children about suicide. Talk to them about how they're feeling. Talk about who's bullying them. Talk to them about who's talking to them on these social media platforms, on these video. The newest station that I think it's PS5 that came out in Christmas. I think I'm right on that one. So yeah, and you can chat with people. So people are being bullied now on these platforms, and bullied to the point to where they want to hurt themselves or kill themselves. So communication is very important. You have to be brave enough to talk about it. That's what I really want to say. Ask and be brave about it so that the person can trust you when they're having those feelings. Then we also have to recognize when a person's hygiene or disposition has changed. Both of those can be signs that somebody may not be having the best time right now. They may be depressed. I talked about that. That was the last S in the SIGI caps. That person is at risk potentially of hurting themselves, harming themselves. We do see where people cut themselves now, self-mutilation. Some of them do it for more enjoyment, just for the pain, but some of them actually do want to hurt themselves and kill themselves. So suicide is real. We need to talk about it. We need to stop the music and stop the shouting and dancing and say, come on, let's go sitting down and talk so we can see what you're really dealing with, what you're really dancing about, what you're really shouting about. Because let me tell you, sometimes, Attorney Stuart, those folks who you see shouting and dancing, they shout and dancing because they know in the back of their mind they're going to go back home and kill themselves. Oh, and again, I'm not imagining anything. I used to be a youth pastor back in Chicago, so I know what I'm talking about. They'll be the first one out there on the dance floor, so to speak, shouting, but they know when as soon as it's done, they was doing it to release their emotions. It was not spirit-filled at all. And so I had to go and talk with them and listen to them so that they wouldn't go and do that. I'll say this too. There's a portion of people, and I hate to say this, but I just have to be comprehensive. There's a portion of people who they're going to want to hurt themselves regardless of what you do. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. And we just have to be ready for that. And I want to avoid that. I want us to decrease that percentage of people. A lot of people are hurting themselves because they feel like they have nobody to talk to and there's no communication. So those are just some of the things. But if a person really wants to hurt or kill themselves or commits or complete a suicide, then sometimes there's nothing we can do. And I just pray to God that we can minimize those numbers of people.
Yes, that if you are thinking of suicide and you're struggling with depression and you don't have anyone to speak with, please note the National Suicide Prevention number that I have scrolling at the bottom of the page.
Yes.
Please call them and let them know how you are feeling and seek the help that you need. Your life is worth living. And no matter how bad it looks, please just take one more day to make this call and to save yourself. Make that call. If you don't have anyone to speak with and you are depressed and you're hurting, call the National Prevention Suicide Hotline. There are trained counselors there and they can assist you because you are not alone in the pain that you feel. Dr. Shepherd, you have done a tremendous job. You have been awesome. Will you come back and be with us again?
Absolutely. It would be
Well,
my honor and
I am
privilege.
excited to have someone of your caliber to take time out to come and share with us on this evening. Thank you for tuning in to Legal Views with attorney Sheila R. Stuart. You have been listening to Savage Solutions. We want to do a shout out to Minister Donnie Savage with Savage Solutions. Donnie, you are doing a great job on CJoy Network. We are now going to turn the broadcast back into the hands of Minister Darrell Breath, all the way in Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you for tuning in, and the mic is yours, Darrell. Thank you so much. Do not leave, Dr. Shepherd. Good evening, and thank you for tuning in with us on this evening. Love you.